From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas That's Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I sit down with Andy Crestodina, and we talk about his agency's survey where they surveyed over 1,000 bloggers and found out what people are doing during blogging. This was a really engaging conversation. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Hey all, Rob Cairns here. I'm here with Andy Crestodina. I hope I didn't butcher that too much.
Crestodina.
I'm sorry, Andy. And we're going to talk about this amazing report Andy's agency came out with on blogging. How are you today, Andy?
I'm good. Rob, thanks for having me on.
No, you're welcome. As you know, I've contributed to the survey multiple years. And when you reached out and said, oh, we're doing a survey again, I thought, what a good topic that we should share. And what the topic is about blogging statistics. And your headline is surveyed 1,067 bloggers showing which content strategies are working in 2021. How is your background in the digital space? So let's talk about that a little bit as an intro. And how did you get into doing the survey?
Well, I realized in 2007 or thereabouts that I needed a way to keep in touch with people over long periods of time. The service my company offers is web design and development. I'm one of the co-founders of a 40-person web design company here in Chicago. And I knew that I needed a way to keep in touch, that people... I might meet someone, great conversation, maybe even worked with them as a client, maybe proposed but didn't get hired. How can I keep in touch with people over the 4-year interval between which, people need websites, and in a 3-month buying cycle, which is the time it takes for people to decide who to hire for their website. So I thought, I'm going to write a newsletter. It's going to simply be an invitation to bring people back to the site because that's where I can generate a lead. And so I just started writing articles and sending them a call to action inside an email. It was about, 250 people in the beginning. And that was the beginning of our content strategy, which has since evolved into writing long-form research-driven search-optimized articles on practical topics related to content strategy, analytics, and web design. We added to that a few years later a monthly event, open house, teaching marketing in person. The high-touch in-person interactions are good for sales, of course, and leads. And then added to that shortly thereafter an annual conference called Content Jam. I've been a speaker for years and had met lots of people who are great speakers and would invite them to speak. Added to that later a book, which was basically a repurposing of many of our most valuable posts. Added to that later a series of videos, which are more or less just using the presentations and the topics from the articles, kind of jumpstarting a YouTube channel just by putting these videos onto pages that already rank well. So lots of leveraging cumulative advantages, trying to get the flywheel going. Today we get around 1.5 million visitors a year. We generate something like 900 leads a year. We have we're a $6 million company that spends nothing on advertising. It's 100% inbound and organic content marketing lead gen program. And the survey was just one of the ideas we had like 8 years ago to just go big into that research format.
One of the things you talked about, interesting enough, is a book and you repurpose content and all that. And as a side point, one of my latest projects is I'm actually repurposing content from this podcast into a book, believe it or not. So
good for you.
I think a lot of people in the content space say, I'm a blogger, what do I do with this? Or I'm a video creator, what do I do with this? Or I'm a podcaster, what do I do with this? And one of the biggest things people need to learn is to repurpose and reuse that content.
Oh, yeah. Without question. It is. So when you read the survey, you realize just how much people are investing their time into these formats and these topics. And the average blog post takes 4 hours to write.
Yep.
That's a big investment. But unlike advertising, which is temporary, content lasts forever. So that's an asset. It was an investment of time. How can you get more value from that same investment? There are a lot of little ways, which we could discuss, but one of the fun ones, especially if you have a B2B service or a high value kind of expensive, high consideration service, then thought leadership or a big content can make a bigger difference. It's a great leave behind in a sales conversation. So just start by writing an outline of everything you know. That's
Mhm.
like the Wikipedia for your brain on a topic, and then ask yourself if you've blogged on each of those topics yet. If not, start filling in the blanks. That outline eventually becomes a table of contents. The blog posts get adapted into the sections. Once it's 70% done, stop everything, sit down, dedicate 100 hours into adapting and polishing and filling in blanks, and now you're an author. That's it. It wasn't expensive or time consuming. It took forethought. It was just a plan that took several years. And today, the book, it's called Content Chemistry, the Illustrated Handbook for Content Marketing, is in its fifth edition.
That's amazing, actually, Andy. Well done. You talked about a blog post takes about 4 hours to put together, and that's one of the statistics, the average that you came out with in this report. Um, what should that 4 hours consist of besides actually writing and doing the content?
Hmm. I once actually, just kind of for fun, turned on a screencast tool like Camtasia, and then
Yeah.
recorded myself going through the entire process, which for me is more like 7 hours, and
Hmm.
then took that super long file and sped it up into about like 15 or 20 minutes, and then narrated myself going through every part of the process for writing a high ranking article.
Yep.
And then at the very end of the post, when I described this and laid out that process, I made a pie chart that showed exactly where my time went. So it might surprise people, but let me for SEO. A lot of my time goes into images, just creating images, because images have such
Yeah.
an outsized correlation with
Agreed.
success. A small amount of the time, smaller than I expected, went into outreach to find contributors to add quotes to my articles, which I never write an article without
Yep.
adding at least one contributor quote. So here's the breakdown: image preparation, 30%, writing, 30%, editing and publishing, that was partly done by my editor, my coworker, Amanda Gant. Research and planning was only about 10%, and influencer collaboration was only 3% of the process.
That's
So
really interesting.
lots of
That's it.
emphasis on the image, right? The pictures, the diagrams, the charts.
Hmm.
They are a lot of the feedback on that article and video was like, "Why do you spend so much time on the pictures?" I could give you a ton of reasons. It is the internet is visual. You're going to get better links. You're going to get better social shares. It's just it correlates with all good things. So I spend a lot of time. In fact, if you look at any of my content, you'll find that there is no scroll depth on any of my articles at which there isn't at least one thing of visual interest, a video or an image. And the images are normally never stock. I never use stock photos. The images are always like charts and graphs or at the head of the face of a contributor. Super powerful.
And using charts and graphs actually give the articles more social proof and proof of
Hmm.
concept and things like that than a stock photo, which you can basically insert from anywhere. So that's a big deal. You start off the one of the things you say in this article, and I love is 77% of all bloggers report that blogging drives results.
Hmm.
And would you agree with that, or would you, from your own experience, or would you disagree? Is that just a number? Or
Uh, I think the the trick with this survey is we just ask this big question: Do which describes your blog?
yep,
My blog gets strong results. My blog gets some results. My blog gets disappointing results, or I don't know. So there's a lot wrapped up in that answer because it doesn't. We're not being specific about what the blogger's goals are. There are other surveys that go into a lot of depth about why people blog and are they blogging for personal reasons or for fame or for fortune or whatever.
hmm,
So mostly when you just get the general answer, 22% report strong results. You can correlate that with all of the past years and find that results are down slightly. It went from 25 to 22% of bloggers reporting that they get strong results from digital. Um, but that big number, 70%, it's working. Not surprising at all. Depending on what your goals are, a lot of people just prioritize sort of like some social visibility at which even a small effort can get results. So it's no, I thought that was it basically looks like a healthy marketing tactic. But there's some qualifiers that go with that statistic.
Yeah, I would agree. And the other thing that I found interesting, and which didn't surprise me, knowing the way Google works, knowing the way search engine optimization works, is when you started the survey, the average blog post was 808 words. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're almost double that. You're sitting at 1,416 words. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Google is a big reason for that. And optimization is a big reason for that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot of studies that show a correlation between longer content and higher rankings.
Yes.
It's one of the most famous correlations in digital, and you can't really disagree with it. But it's a correlation. So it's sad to me we have to keep explaining that there is no length is not a search ranking factor. This
Yes.
is not. It's not just because longer posts rank high doesn't mean that every page that ranks in Google is long. Every page that that is short does not rank. It, so I worry that people take that to be too prescriptive. But the fact that content has gotten much longer is not even debatable. People are just really going deep into topics, which is mostly good, as long as they aren't fluffing up, you know, weak and boring articles. And that, so instead of writing a 1,000 word article and trying to, just add filler until it gets to 1,400, or it's far better to write a 2,000 word article and trim it down to be as short and concise as possible. And in the end, for people that worry like, oh, my audience has a short attention span, I should never write a long article, just keep in mind that people in your audience binge watch TV for 4 hours at a time. The problem isn't people's attention spans. The problem is that the content is too dense or not consumable or not accessible. So break up your content with lots of formatting, headers, subheads, bullet lists, bolding, internal links, tons of pictures if you can do it. Uh, the problem, if I look at my analytics, I have posts with hundreds of thousands of views where the average time on that post is 7 minutes.
Yeah.
It's so every article should be as long as it needs to be to cover the topic completely. But I agree with you, Rob. There is no question that the SEO correlation studies are pushing up blog post length. It's almost certain.
Yeah, I should tell you too. I have a number of journalists and retired journalists, like newspaper reporters in my circles, and we're forever talking about page length, even in a newspaper article or a magazine article. Sometimes in regular journalism, sometimes it's a space constraint. Sometimes it's, oh, we only want an article the publisher wants of 2,000 words. Sometimes it's, I want a quick comment of 500 words. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it all depends on what your audience is after. I think that's a big deciding factor as well.
Yeah, that's the ultimate advice. It's like what is your content strategy? What are the information needs of your audience?
Yeah,
What is
yeah,
what's working for you based on your experience and your data? And so it's a these things are not meant to be prescriptive. I know that people don't like to hear the answer "it depends," and so I try to never say those two words together. It depends, but
I do.
it's just so unsatisfying. In my content, I never write those words. I just immediately jump into what it depends upon. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is. Uh, Obviously, the intersection between your audience, where they are in their day in their life, your content, and what problems it solves and utility it offers,
Yeah.
your value proposition and how qualified that visitor would be if they land on your content, the design in which the content lives. There's all the there's intent and there's topics and there's depth. All these things combine to equal results. So it I mean, if I did a study that said like, oh, New York Times bestsellers tend to have 3 words in their titles. Oh, I'll write a book with a 3 word title, and therefore I'll be a bestseller. Like that's obviously ridiculous. this correlation data in marketing studies is no different.
No, I agree with you. So the third point, and you and I were talking in a pre-show a little bit about this. I really want to address this one: trends in blogging frequency. How frequent do bloggers publish? And I had said to you earlier today, doesn't consistency matter more? And I personally I think it does, because if you're going to go to your readers, listeners, consumers of your content and say, I'm going to do something every week on a Thursday, as far
Mm-hmm.
as I'm concerned, you should make that happen every week on a Thursday. If you
Mm-hmm.
say you're going to do something every week on a Thursday and you might once in a while throw a special item in, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But I think, to me, frequency is a misnomer,
Mm-hmm.
and I think consistency matters more. Thoughts on that one?
Well, there's an answer to the frequency question. I
Yep.
publish at irregular intervals, and those bloggers do not report strong success. They're less than half as likely as the rest of the respondents to report strong success from digital. So that correlation is there. I intuitively or through experience have made the same conclusion that you have. Uh, Partly because if you've written a good call to action to sign up for a newsletter or to subscribe to anything, for example, ours is get practical tips for content analytics and web design every 2 weeks. You're committing. Your calls to action are in fact a promise. So you're
Mhm.
making a promise. So either you made a good promise and you're breaking it by not being consistent, or you've
Yep.
just committed to not being consistent and you're not even making a good promise. So it's one of those two problems. Either you're not doing what you said you're going to do, or you're not actually even serious enough to tell people that they're going to get something on a regular basis. Both of those would be negatives for results.
No, I would agree with you. And, we were also talking about the whole frequency issue, how each one of us, I don't know if you've done, but I certainly did back in the day. I did like the pro blogger, Darren Rose, write a blog every day for 30 days.
Mhm.
And that strategy, I think, is so 10 years ago at this point. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think that strategy works as well as it does today. Then just keep writing good content that your readers want to hear and read, not
Mhm.
content that you want to put out, which is an interesting concept.
Yeah, that sounds like an assignment from a writing class or something. It's like the
Yeah.
advice to journal or do your morning pages. I've never tried that. It would never have aligned with my strategy. Uh, I'm trying to write uh, the the best page on the internet, and that's not hyperbole. I'm actually serious. If I'm writing an article, I am making my legit best effort to make that the most comprehensive piece on that topic.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can't afford to do that more than once every 2 weeks. That's just been my frequency for 12 years. I'm never going to publish more often than that. But there's so that I don't even know what I would try to do in a daily post. I know bloggers that have done it. Ali Gardner has done that,
Yeah.
like 30 posts in 30 days. Um, I, I I suspect that the outcome would be maybe more of a personal one than a professional one. I'm certain that would be very good for my discipline, for my morning routine, for my writing skills. But I don't know how that would really. I think I'd be exhausted and probably would not have done any better for generating leads. In fact, I might have been a negative, because if I'm reducing my quality to hit a frequency number, then I've kind of betrayed my main strategy anyway.
No, I would agree with it. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit on some of the highlights of this report. I'm going to put a link to the report in the show notes. So if anybody would like to read it, or you're blogging, I would suggest actually you go read it. I was sharing it with a couple colleagues this morning, and they found it really in depth. So if it sounds like we're kind of jumping all over, there's just a lot of content here. And one other thing I found interesting was the whole discussion about headlines.
Hmm.
So, and the reason I did was, you were talking about how many times do you write a headline, but we also were talking about writing effective headlines. And there's a lot of bloggers, and I hate to say it, old journalists in the newspaper world that like to write what I call clickbaity headlines.
Mm-hmm.
And that might seem like a good idea to get views on that post, but I actually think in the long term that hurts your credibility.
Oh, yeah.
So, what's your thought on that strategy?
Well, to me, clickbait is a polite way to say lying. It's just
Yeah.
a clickbait headline is one that does everything possible to get the visitor to click, regardless of the quality on the other side of the click, or get them to click and then have them go through this endless, you know, sequence of pages or galleries to try to find the one thing they thought they wanted because the advertiser wants to do sell lots of display ad space. If a clickbait headline, a headline is a promise. The page that they land on should live up to that promise, or you've hurt your brand's reputation. Uh, you're going to hurt word of mouth. You're going to hurt referrals. Your the value goes down to zero, if not less than zero. So, I recommend using all of the psychological tactics you can to make it a strong promise, a compelling promise. Use numbers, use unexpected words, use some of those um, three-word trigrams. Really interesting. BuzzSumo found strong correlations between combinations of words and rankings. Um, Basically, what a headline does is the visitor who sees it, whether they're in a social stream or an inbox or a search results page, they're doing a split-second cost-benefit calculation and asking, did the benefits of clicking on this exceed the 2 seconds of my time? They're doing an ROI we all do ROI calculations every time we see a headline. So your job as an author of a headline is to make the return exceed the investment. But to do that, you need to be specific, but of course be honest, because you're not looking for one visitor. You're looking for a new fan or follower or an advocate for your content or someone who might share. So it's just short-term thinking.
No, I would agree with you. And then you talk about, let's get back to SEO, search engine optimization. And your headline reads, "Are bloggers researching keywords?" And the kind of the way the numbers hit out is only 27% of all bloggers always research keywords.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the biggest mistake that bloggers make. They want to get organic traffic and they don't bother to research keywords for their blogs. But more importantly, they don't bother to research the keywords about what their competitors are writing about in their space. And that, I think, is as important when doing keyword research. What are your thoughts on that?
I mostly agree. In a way, I think that when I answer this question, I myself, taking the survey on the last day, I go in and fill in my answers right before we close. I do not say that I research keywords 100% of the time
Yep.
because not every article that I publish is something that people search for. I'll give you some examples. I once wrote a post that was about productivity tips for marketers. It's not really a topic, marketer specific productivity, where I could find a good key phrase for it. Or another one I wrote was pictures of 27 marketers' desks. It's actually one of
Oh,
the most successful pieces I've run in the last year or so. It was like a mini viral event. Every one of these influencers and top YouTubers had shared pictures and lists of their gear and how they
you
handle
don't want
lighting,
mine.
cameras. Actually, they're funny, Rob. Not all of them are. One of them has he's got baby toys in the background, and his computer
Yeah.
was held up by an old board game.
Yeah. I'm
So
laughing when I get
it's
it.
cool, yeah. Or like Nadia from Ben Gage had they're not all beautiful,
No.
but that's not something people search for. So every piece of content should be created
Yeah.
with a promotion plan. That one was built to be shared because it's lots of contributors, it's super visual, it's kind of like unexpected. So everything needs to have some concept of how it's going to get traction. If if it's not search, it should be something else. Not every
Yeah.
topic is being searched for, but whatever you're making, don't wait till it's live before you start thinking about how to promote it. That's too late.
No, I would agree. So true. And we go on to the topic of biggest challenges for bloggers.
Hmm.
And I think you could take the numbers that came out of this section and drop them into any content creation, whether it's a podcaster, whether it's a videocaster. Because I
I
looked at
agree.
these numbers, and we were talking in the pre-show how I don't do traditional blogging anymore.
Hmm.
Everybody in my circle knows that my agency produces a weekly podcast, and we produce the odd video tutorial. But frankly, I got burned out of writing, and I do so much writing for clients. The last person I want to write for is myself, and I admit that. But interesting enough, 53% of people said it's a time factor.
I
Isn't
know.
that so true?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't that align with all the previous answers of people spending more
Yeah.
time, people writing longer posts, people doing more. So what correlates with results? Consistently researching keywords, consistently working with professional editors, consistently writing longer form content, consistently writing content more often. I mean, no one can do all of these. You can't both blog every day and spend 8 hours on a post. So that one, um, that's a big number. It's even bigger than I thought. 53%. That means most. That's most of us.
Yeah. And
So
what I would add to that too is one of the ways you alleviate the time crunch is keep a swipe file. So when you think of an idea or a point, you might not need it in today's article, but you might use it down the road. Write notes. Oh, I thought of a good idea of an image for something, but I don't need it today. Make yourself a note. Like, do things to try and streamline that process, right?
I love that. I do that. All the best bloggers have some mechanism for quickly capturing new ideas or for quickly collecting information about an idea they've already been kind of marinating over. It's that is critically important. There are at the very end of the survey, I try to list 3 tips for addressing each of those top concerns, and that was one I put on there. You and I both, I think we. Oh no, well no, that actually addresses several of these concerns because one of them
Yep.
was um, coming up with relevant topics.
Hmm.
So without a some kind of Evernote or Moleskine notebook or some tool, you're going to be at a big disadvantage because these ideas will kind of float right past you and you'll lose them. But Rob, you and I think are both big fans of that. Both the capture, the forethought, the planning, the repurposing.
Hmm.
This is really the strategic blogger's approach. These are the things that separate the early career from the later career content creators.
No, no question. I mean, I one of the things I do is I sleep with a notebook on my nightstand. Believe it or
Hmm.
not, I've been known to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, go to the bathroom, and take the notebook with me. That's I, as gross as it sounds, I've done that many more times. I'll be out. I go walking every day for an hour, and it's not uncommon for me to grab my smartphone and hit the dictation button and say, "Oh, I've got an idea," and dictate it into my phone so I don't forget about it.
Hmm.
Things like that, and then you transpose it and put it into where you need it, and there's your ideas, right? I mean, because as
Hmm.
creatives, one of the things people don't realize is when you're forced to write, and
Hmm.
I go back to the journalist who's got to write a byline every day at 5 o'clock, and it has to be in for tomorrow's paper. That's a challenge because he's under the gun, and he's
Hmm.
got some days. We both know the creative juices just don't flow well. And
Hmm.
I've put stuff down. I've put web work down for clients and said, you know what? Today's a bad day. I'm not even going to go there. I'll go back at it tomorrow,
Hmm.
and I'll do something else with my time, because you got to be in position to do that, because it's a lot easier to come up with ideas when you're in the mood than when you're not in the mood, right? So
Yeah, it's there's different psychologies, I think. I've never written about this, but there's an inspiration phase in the
yeah.
life in the life cycle of a new piece of content. And then there's the collection, kind of pondering, keeping it in the back of your mind phase, which may last for months. And then there's the I think I've got sufficient, I've got an outline here. Then it's the endurance, the sit down, the focus, turn off all distractions, try hard to just stay in front of that tab in the browser and just keep going. And then at the end, it's the 24-hour rule. You got to let it sit for a little bit and come back and look at it. So I try to have a very low barrier to entry to quickly starting things because that's going to give me more ideas to potentially, sprout and grow later. And then the next is I want to have a very long attention span to just persist and stay focused, like that book Deep Work suggests. Just stay focused on that one topic. Stay at maximum cognitive intensity for the longest, for the greatest number of minutes. So there is, I find myself trying to switching between mental modes to try to both, have quickly start things and then endure during the creation process, and then polish and cut ruthlessly, editing at the last stage. It's sort of like being in different types of meetings. It's like it being in different mental modes, and it's helpful to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And the second point on this list is how to get traffic and attract visitors to your blog. And one of the first point you say improve your email signups and CTAs.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, it's about time. A lot of people think email marketing and email automation marketing is dead. I would be
Oh,
the first to disagree. I run an email list that has 8,100 people in it right now,
hmm.
and that's been curated over 8 or 9 years. I segmented off. I've worked my list hard, but email signups to me is one of the best ways to promote your blog and to also get people into your business funnel. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? If not that, we're in trouble. So it is uh, I tell people that email is disintermediation. It's your only
Mhm.
chance to connect with your audience without a big tech company in the middle.
Yep.
With someone, you don't own your search rankings or your social followers, but you own your email list, you own your content, you own your domain, you own your website. These are the only things you actually own in this game. So I'd rather have one good email subscriber than 100 Twitter followers. There is no question the value is something like 10 or 100x. So it is, every serious marketer I know uh, is actively, aggressively attempting to grow their email list, because without that, I mean, you have all of your traffic sources are dependent upon some intermediary, some big tech company that can change the rules any day they want. So yes,
Or,
email.
or or go down in the case of at the time of this recording that Facebook did last week, and we all know what a kerfuffle that caused. And
Hmm.
there's a tech company that I believe, because of what's going on, is going to undergo some sanctions in the U.S. I would suspect. They're at the time of this recording, they're in front of Congress. The whistleblower has testified in front of Congress, has been on 60 Minutes. There's all kinds of stuff going on there, and I
Good.
think I think we're in for some disruption, whether people like it or not.
I
And
welcome that. It's a
also,
that's a creepy business. I'm not a fan. And it's sad to see so many people who are so dependent on them. Facebook going down hurt so many businesses who are 100% reliant upon some Facebook market e-commerce presence. Like that's your whole business, is just living on the back of this big tech beast. I don't think that's a great plan.
I know of a client who created a micro business, and by micro businesses we mean the ones that depend on the Facebook and Instagram marketplaces. He on paper lost $200,000 today. Facebook went down.
Wow.
He is now spending money with me to build an e-commerce store. I wonder
Good.
why. I
Good.
wonder
Yeah.
why.
Own your destiny.
Yes.
Please. That
Yeah.
is risky.
Yeah, and it seems to go on a lot. And just to kind of summarize, the third part, the third point in this list was creator quality content consistency. And we already kind of talked about consistency. And I think a lot of people just, especially if they're sole entrepreneurs or small shop, they don't spend time marketing their own businesses very well. They're out there doing everything for their clients, and they forget that part of running a business is building time into their schedule to market their own business, and running a blog is a very good way to do that. Thoughts on that?
I think it's an excellent thing. It's a durable thing. Content marketing is slow but durable. As
Yeah.
we say, advertising is maybe fast but only temporary.
Hmm.
If you're not continually investing to build up your body of work, And if you're worried about if you want results from it sooner, you for any B2B company, especially, or anyone that has like a longer sales process, just go ahead and create bottom of funnel content,
Yeah.
content that helps sales, content that you can talk about during a sales meeting or on a sales call, and you'll get value from that the day after it goes live. So uh, it is it's a risky thing to not be continuously putting pennies in that content piggy bank. I'd be very nervous, not for this year, but if I didn't, do this event I'm doing tonight or write that article that I have due Monday, all these things I need to do, I would be very nervous for how I'm going to keep these 44 people employed a year from now and 2 years from now. So
I would
we
I
can't
would
stop.
agree. I
Yeah.
would agree. And then just to kind of wrap it up, you put a bonus point in, and you talked about COVID affecting bloggers, and COVID really hasn't affected the blogging sphere. Um, what I would say it's probably affected is people are reading more blogs and more content because they're at home more, but I don't think it's affected the production side.
Yeah. It was really interesting to see the mix in that answer. Uh, I I was sort of surprised to see that there's just as many who are blogging more frequently as less frequently.
Yeah.
Um, so, but but yeah, digital marketing is having a moment, and there's more demand for people like there's a big shortage of talent and experience in the digital marketing world. So yeah, people are reading more. I think bloggers are adapting their content a little bit. You see that finding time is still a problem, but um, I think that was interesting and kind of a surprise that 41% of bloggers reported that nothing in their strategies had changed due to COVID. Did yours at all change, Rob?
In terms of podcasting, no. I didn't change much how I was doing it, except the only change I really made was I used to drop new podcasts on a Tuesday. Now I do on a Thursday, but that
Mm,
was a mechanics change that I made.
hmm
But in terms of frequency, not at all. What I will say is, as somebody who reads a lot of content and listens to a lot of content, I'm not a big TV watcher, so my content consumption has not changed really.
mm,
I listen to a lot of content while I'm working. I'm one of these who cannot do silence unless I'm actually audio editing. I can't work in silence. So
mm,
I've always got something on. I know at night I try to read an hour a night pretty well, or a half hour a night of important content in my space. So I don't think my consumption has changed.
hmm
I think what's changed is I just have less tolerance for the garbage that's on the what I call the idiot box. If it's not a sporting event, I'm probably not watching it. So
hmm
so there's some of that, but no, our consumption hasn't changed at all. To be honest with you, so.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting to see if people have pivoted or how people have changed. But I think part of what this shows is that when the people who were active in their content programs prior to COVID, in the years prior to COVID, uh, came out quite strong.
Yeah,
If COVID was a trigger for you to start content marketing, you're not yet feeling the result. Maybe only now starting to get some traction from it. What I did, so I have to speak at conferences a lot. So I was, 2, 3 times a month getting on a plane or flying around or driving to events to give to do presentations. I no longer had that time required, so I had 15% more time or something like that. So I immediately turned around and started building out that YouTube channel. I've had less time for it lately because we're just so busy, but it was interesting and fun, and I'll continue to do it. But to add a format, I thought this is great. I'm in the office. I'm the only person, 44 people working remotely. I'm just going to work here alone. Turn on the camera, give my best advice, record, upload, and it worked beautifully.
yeah. Showing your real self does work. I mean, one of the things I do is I do podcast interviews in that space, but I also like to do, if I've got a topic that comes to mind, I'll throw out a 10-minute like advice podcast, which is, and
Mm-hmm.
and people love to hear the real use. So there's a lot of value in that. But I think the way that we're, consuming content is changing
Mm-hmm.
a little bit because people are still reading a lot. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to audio and video content, it's coming at you from 50 ways. Somebody said to me, oh, well, you don't have a cable TV subscription. I don't. But I probably spend more money on content consumption avenues today than I ever did before.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's
Because you're just choosing what you want instead of
yeah,
what you're force fed.
yeah.
So
That's
that's really
unusual.
interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
find that interesting. Um,
So one of the things you didn't talk about in the survey was blogging platforms, which would be
mhm,
is an interesting discussion.
mhm,
I would suspect that most of the serious bloggers are probably using WordPress. I would think these days.
mhm, mhm.
Do
It's
you know any statistics around that right now?
well, it is the majority of blogs, I think, or according to WordPress itself. It's publicly available knowledge, or there are sites that track how many posts are published per day, what percentage of blogs use which platform. Um, I try to so even though we're in the business of web development,
Yeah.
I try to stay mostly agnostic on the technology questions.
Hmm.
People say, "What's the best tool for this?" or "What should I be using? Which of these SEO packages?" I've used all the SEO tools forever, and so I like.
The one that works well for you and your
Yeah,
business. That's my
it's
answer. Like,
yeah, it is. Back to that strategic question. So it's like I think what I worry about in terms of the MarTech stack, as people call it now,
yep,
is that people overbuy marketing technology.
yep,
For example, there's a lot of people who are paying $800 a month for HubSpot and using it just like MailChimp. You can save yourself $750 a month by canceling HubSpot and just switching to MailChimp. So it's not, uh, it's Jay Bear says, it's not the wand, it's the wizard.
hmm
Um, so what tools you use whatever to reach for whatever tool helps you solve that problem. Uh, Personally, I don't need to find, you heard my rant against big tech and,
I
Facebook and
did.
Google.
Yeah,
Similarly, why are we looking for a single tool to do all the things we need instead of just reaching for the tool you need at the time? That's like people have this sort of predisposition to helping big tech get bigger by
yep.
this obsession with integration and single platform and automation. If I could, I'd buy my marketing technology at the farmer's market. I'll buy it from the little company, the startup that did a good job. I love Market Muse for on-page SEO. Uh, I'll use Hotjar to support analytics. I like to find the tool that works for my even a narrow use case.
Yep.
What's the big deal? Grab the tool you need. If you don't need it, cancel it. But I think that obsession with single platform and has done wonders for HubSpot, but it has not done great things for entrepreneurs and startups and small business. And it also is frequently low ROI because people buy that tool before they even have content to publish.
No,
So,
I agree with you. I mean, and I think people get hung up, frankly, on that shiny new object. It looks really nice. We've seen a lot of it, out of the blogging space and project management tools in the last 2 years. I mean, if
mhm,
there's been one, there's been another. Oh, why did you use that tool? Because person A said it'd be a good tool. And is it working for you? Like, honestly, like
mhm,
I and I come from a project management background before I got into marketing. And let me tell you, I've never found a project management tool that does exactly what I want. So, it's sad. And then people get into this, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. So, where do I start my podcast? And they jump around tools like they're nothing. Like, take the time, establish your business, then make a decision. And one spot I've done that twice recently is once in a podcasting forum. I After I hit 150 episodes, I made a decision to switch podcast platforms, and that wasn't something I did lightly.
mhm.
And
Wow.
then after years of running my email marketing software within WordPress, I made the decision that I needed to do some more automation. So that obviously changed the tool that I was going to use. But
Hmm.
beyond that, I haven't really changed my tool stack and my software stack in probably 8 or 9 years, like honestly.
Yeah. I think people ask me that question as if I'm going to tell them which tool is necessary to drive big results.
Yeah.
And when I kind of shrug, they're sort of surprised. It's like, oh, come on, just tell me, give me the thing I need. I'm sure you know it. Just tell me which one's the best. Like, you know, I could take any. Go give me a content management system, an email service provider, a customer relationship management tool, right? A good database. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
as long as I can publish and capture subscribers and send them an auto response welcome series and my form submissions go into my database, I could get the same results I get now with any of those tools. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that there's any correlation. I don't care which one. So why not use why not use Zoho instead of Salesforce and use
Yep.
ActiveCampaign instead of HubSpot? These are the
Yep.
choices I've made, and I'm very happy with them.
Yeah, my mailing tool these days is ConvertKit, but and I
Cool.
and nothing wrong with Active Campaign. I know it like the back of my hand. I've just made a choice, and
Great.
that's okay, right?
Yeah, that's make a decision and then get to work.
And
It's
then
not.
get
It's
to
like,
work.
yeah, what's the best car to drive? Should I drive Ford or Chevy or Audi or Beamer? You're trying to get to point B. Mostly, it's about taking the right road,
Yep.
driving under the limit. Turning right, turning left. I can go to point B in any car. I will
Yep.
get results in any platform. These are
It,
not things that drive. It's not a factor in success.
it's the old in the technology game, the old Mac versus PC argument, right? That's been
Right.
going on for years. And my answer to that argument is none of them because I don't use either.
It's
So yeah.
and yeah, does that
So
affect your outcomes? Yeah. People look at me and they say, "Oh, wow, you're using a Pixel phone? That's so weird, Andy. Why aren't you using an iPhone?"
I
Is
love
an
a Pixel
iPhone?
phone.
Yeah, it's like, would I have better phone calls with an iPhone? Is there some difference? Would it really matter? Mac versus so I happen to have an Apple laptop. I have a Google phone. You know, so what? These
Yeah.
I think it's if you're at a conference, people are just making conversation, and it's a fun conversation. What's in your Martech stack? But it's not a strategic question. No one should pretend that it is.
No. So let's take a moment before we close and sort of look into the crystal ball. 'Cause it's something I like to do. Where do you see blogging going in the next year? Seeing the trends, seeing what's been going on with your agency and the report that you produced.
Thanks for that great question. I think that the trend both in the big picture and in the marketing world, the rich tend to get richer. The people who are good at content will pull away from from the pack farther and farther. So it will get more competitive. There are certain spaces in SEO. Let's just take like certain key phrase categories where it will be almost too late for new entries to compete.
Yes.
It's like being publishing on actually it's actually a counterexample. Healthline has grown dramatically in search and visibility on all kinds of healthcare topics, uh, contrary to conventional wisdom, beating out Mayo Clinic and WebMD and um, the Cleveland Clinic in the U.S. at least. So there is still opportunity. It will take a bigger investment than before to get into that competitive category, but I project just a continuation of these trends. Um, I think that there will be LinkedIn will likely grow in importance to lots of bloggers. Facebook may decline in importance to lots of bloggers. Click through rate from Google will continue to decline. We'll have to, the big platforms sort of set the rules and we'll have to live within them. But people who have a loyal audience get word of mouth, referrals are a source of leads, and they've got an email list. Uh, if that's you, congratulations, you are building long-term security. I commend you. Keep going, and just keep in mind that most of the competition out there is really doing a terrible job. So you don't have to worry about the 7 million blog posts published per day. It's mostly garbage. So this is a benefit to the rest of us.
No, I would agree with you. If somebody wants to read the report, where can they get it? And where can they get a hold of you and your agency?
The report is at orbitmedia.com. Just click over to the blog and you'll find it at the top. We'll leave it there as one of the featured posts for several months. So if you're listening to this anytime, probably anytime in 2022, it's easy to promote. I'll probably pin it to the top of my Twitter feed. LinkedIn is my best social network. My last name sounds like it's spelled, or is spelled like it sounds. It's Crestodina, Crestodina. Look me up, reach out, send me a message. I'll help anyone however I can. It's the best part of my day.
Thanks, Andy. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rob. This was fantastic.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. A very special thank you to Andy for joining me on this week's podcast and sharing his insights about blogging. If you thought blogging was dead, you should go listen to this episode again. Thank you for listening to this edition of the SDM Show. This podcast is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing. For links to Stunning Digital Marketing and Rob Cairns, please go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info. This podcast is dedicated to Rob's late father, Bruce Cairns. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed. Bye for now.